Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, electoral umpire raises security alarm over attitude exhibited by Ondo state politicians ahead of the November 26th governorship election. President Buhari admits initial scare at the state of Nigeria's economy after his election victory, pledges to bring Nigeria out of economic mess created by the PDP. Senate accuses executive of submitting incomplete medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to the National Assembly. And more than 200 migrants feared drowned in 2 shipwrecks off the coast of Libya.
On Business News tonight, Securities and Exchange Commission leadership meets with former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Ogun State Governor Ibikole Amosun on ways to develop the capital market.
On sports news tonight, the world's football governing body FIFA shortlists Brazilian forward Marta, US striker Kali Lloyd and 8 others for 2016 Women Player of the Year awards.
I'm Gloria Umezoke, and from Abuja, victims of clashes between Abagana and Upo communities in Anambra State demand justice and compensation following destructive conflict.
We begin tonight in Abuja, where the Independent National Electoral Commission has raised concerns over the attitude of politicians in Ondo State ahead of the governorship election later this month. According to the resident electoral commissioner in the state, Mr. Olusegun Agbaje, the actions of some aggrieved politicians are capable of undermining the security of the state. Mr. Agbaje made the remarks at a meeting with members of some civil society groups in Abuja to assess the preparedness of the electoral body ahead of the governorship poll.
It is barely 4 weeks to the Ondo State governorship elections, and members of the civil society groups are here to listen to INEC's preparations for the polls. All attention is fixed on the Ondo State Resident Electoral Commissioner as he briefs the gathering about the Commission's readiness for the elections. He, however, expresses concern about the attitude of some politicians in the state, saying it could threaten the peaceful conduct of the polls.
The mindset of the political class, especially the politicians that belong to the leading political parties, on what it takes to win elections usually involve violence and malpractices among their followers. There is urgent need for the political class to change its do-or-die attitude to good conduct in politics. And the political culture of violence has to be done away with our political parties.
On the sideline of the event, the resident electoral commissioner also shed light on the reasons why INEC published the name of Mr. Jimo Ibrahim as the PDP candidate, a decision that led to massive protest in the state.
It is the court judgment of that day that forced us to say it is this person. And that means that if another higher court now comes with a judgment to say it is Peter Jegede, you will shift over. In fact, last week when the others came to our office, they even forced me to make a commitment on behalf of that. What if the court, the appeal court, says it's retired, and if the commission, I say no, the commission cannot say no. And even if the commission says no, I will sign my appointment with the commission.
Meanwhile, some members of the civil society group advised politicians to address issues of candidacy in-house instead of approaching the courts for such decisions.
I do not think that INEC has any major role to play in deciding who the candidates are, and that's why INEC has taken the decision it has taken. It's really for the political parties to sort out their mess, for the courts to really not become a theater of deciding who candidates are, but the political parties themselves.
Over 1,600,000 voters registered for the elections. Out of this number, more than 330,000 voters are yet to collect their permanent voters card.
The fear of security in the forthcoming Ondo governorship election may not be out of place, given the charged political atmosphere in the state. And this report takes a look back at some of the significant political events that occurred in the state in recent times.
The Ondo governorship election is 3 weeks away, but the numerous controversies surrounding the emergence of flag bearers from the various political parties appear to cast a shadow of uncertainty on the election.
Are you going to vote on 26?
For the People's Democratic Party, it's been legal battles since the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, listed Mr. Jimoh Ibrahim from the Ali Modu Sheriff faction as the PDP's candidate in the poll. The electoral body said it was obeying a ruling by Justice Okonabang of an Abuja Federal High Court.
Ondo State High Court, that judgment was okay. Again, this one is being the last judgment before the release of the candidate's name. The commission felt that name should now be used. So hence Jimoh Ibrahim's name was on that list. So I made them realize that that was why the commission also in its wisdom put by court order in front of the candidate and his deputy.
So we see this action of INEC as potentially dangerous. It can cause conflagration in the state.
Mr. Ibrahim's emergence was greeted with protests by supporters of Mr. Yifeanyi Odegede, who had earlier emerged candidate of the Ahmed Makarfi faction. Fast forward, a newly constituted panel of the Court of Appeal is on hand to hear the case brought by the Ahmed Makarfi faction, but Mr. Jimoh Ibrahim has kicked against the panel.
Even apart from Boroye's petition that led to this disbandment of the panel, we have entered appeal at the Supreme Court.
While the All Progressives Congress has had its fair share of internal squabbles, as soon as Mr. Rotimi Akeredolu emerged the flag bearer, his fellow contestant Olushola Oke moved on to the Alliance for Democracy, where he now holds sway as the governorship candidate. Meanwhile, Mr. Olusegun Abraham, who emerged second in the APC primary, has insisted that Mr. Akeredolu is not the rightful candidate of the party. Though INEC has raised concerns over some comments made by some of the politicians that seem inflammatory, the electoral umpire appears determined to go ahead with the poll.
Staying with electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission has approved the conduct of the Lagos House of Representatives election for Saturday, December 3rd. On the same day, the Commission says it will conduct polls for the councillorship election in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Well, this was made known today by the Secretary to the Commission, Augusta Ogaku. She also affirms and confirms that the National Assembly and State Assembly elections will hold on Saturday, December 10th. This follows the Senate's threat that it would suspend plenary until polls are conducted to fill the vacant seats of lawmakers representing Rivers State in the National Assembly. The Commission calls on voters and political party leaders in the state to adhere to the rules that guide the conduct of elections in the country. Away from electoral matters, the President has been speaking on the shock he experienced when he assumed office and discovered that there was no money to work for the people after winning the 2015 election. President Muhammadu Buhari, who was addressing the course 38 participants of the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies at the Presidential Villa, blamed the People's Democratic Party for perpetuating poverty in Nigeria 16 years on. But he promised to bring Nigeria's economy out of recession and make it stronger than he met it.
Founded in 1979, the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies is a policy formation center for bureaucrats, private sector leaders, army officers, and medium rank and senior civil servants.
Good morning.
This year, their assignment from the President is to find out how to strengthen institutional mechanisms for poverty reduction and inclusive development. For over 6 months, they researched on the topic and are here to submit their findings to the President. He tells them that the topic is timely, especially now that the economy is witnessing a downturn following a decline in oil revenue. He says he nearly gave up as a result of what he inherited from past administrations in Nigeria.
The economic recession is not the making of this administration, but rather a consequence of bad management of the economy in the first couple of decades. Actually, I felt right to abscond because 27 out of the 36 of states of Nigeria cannot pay salaries. And we know the lower income group, they depend on the salaries to pay rent and to manage their families. I asked, any savings? I was told there was no saving. What have you done on agriculture? Power, rail, roads, nothing. You know it more than I do because you move. After the election, I don't move anymore. But we are still moving around. How many of the trunk A roads from A to B are still good enough? How much power do we have? Of course, there were some elements of sabotage. But then, where is that money?
The president, however, promises to take care of the poor masses who voted for him despite the situation.
It is impossible for this administration to ignore the poor who made great sacrifice to bring us to government. Ours, more than any other government in the history of Nigeria, is a people's government. We therefore must and we will keep faith with the people.
The president promised to study and implement the policies. For now, political observers say policy somersault has been the bane of past governments in Nigeria. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.